Hey, Tommy, have you noticed that hybrids are all the rage?
Yeah, they sure are. It seems like every new car is coming out with some kind of gas-electric combo, and in today's video, we're talking about all the hybrids on the market and which ones you should consider buying.
Yeah, so we'll start with the Tourbillon, the new Bugatti. No, that's not our world.
I think it's Tourbillon.
Is it?
Tourbillon.
I thought it was like Tourbillon.
Tourbillon. No, I don't. I think it's Tourbillon.
It's going to take a while for me to figure out how to pronounce that. But no, look, we don't drive Bugattis for the most part. And we're not going to be talking about the new Porsche hybrid, the 911. But we will be talking about the hybrids that most people buy. And I think we should define the difference between hybrid and plug-in hybrid. I'm sure most of you know the difference, but why don't you start with that, Tommy?
Well, a hybrid is a gasoline vehicle that has an electric assist, a motor or a couple of motors integrated into the vehicle with a relatively small battery that helps fill in the gaps when the gasoline engine is inefficient. So when you're moving slow, when you're stopped at a stoplight, even cruising, going up hills, the electricity can assist in the internal combustion engine. And then the key difference here is that a hybrid keeps its battery at an optimum level by itself. So it charges when you're slowing down, it discharges when you're speeding up, and it maintains a level. There's no way the user can actually add electricity from the wall. A plug-in hybrid is a similar concept, except it's got a larger battery and oftentimes larger motors, so it can go a short distance on electricity alone, and then when the electricity runs out, it goes back to being a standard hybrid. But the plug-in hybrid you can actually add power to at your house or a charging station or whatever.
Yeah, so I think, for the layman, that means that a hybrid, you never plug in and you never have to worry about it running out of electricity, because it's just like a regular traditional internal combustion engine, because it has an internal combustion engine and the battery is just helping that motor be more efficient. For the most part, there are other kinds of hybrids like the Toyota trucks that are giving it more torque and don't necessarily make it more efficient. And let's put some numbers to that, right? So a hybrid might have, maybe a 2 kilowatt hour battery or less?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and a plug-in hybrid might have 10, 15, 20, 25 kilowatt hours, depending on the hybrid. And what's really clever about the plug-in hybrid is that when that battery is depleted, unlike an electric car, you can still drive it on gasoline, right? It's going to run like any other vehicle. You fill it up at a gas station, and then off you go. The weird thing about plug-in hybrids is they don't get very good fuel economy when they're on gasoline. They actually usually get worse fuel economy than a standard hybrid because they have such a big, heavy battery that when it's depleted, you're just lugging around dead weight. So the fuel economy is usually worse on them.
Yeah, and then if you, like a Jeep 4xe is a plug-in hybrid, and the other problem which Jeep is finding is that you're actually carrying around two powertrains. And what I mean by that is you're carrying around an internal combustion engine and all the issues with that. So you got to change the oil, you've got fuel pumps that can break, alternators that can go, and then you also have an electric power plant, so you also have an electric motor, which tends to be pretty bulletproof, but you also have a battery that at some point probably will need replacing. And that's the downside to it. And then the other thing that we should talk about, Tom, before we get to the different hybrids out there, is how mechanically they work. So some hybrids, they'll take the electric motor, and they'll actually physically kind of sandwich it in between the transmission and the internal combustion engine. And other hybrids, like Toyota likes to do this, will have like the rear wheels powered by an electric motor and the front wheels powered by the internal combustion engine. It depends, right? That can change.
I mean, there's so many different ways to do a hybrid.
Yes.
So what Toyota does a lot of the times is they'll do like a 2 hybrid setup. So in their all-wheel drive vehicle, you're right, the rear axle is powered by electricity only.
There's no drive shaft between.
Yeah, but the front axle is not gas only.
Right.
That's a key distinction. The front axle is also powered by electric motors.
Or assisted by electric motors.
Yeah, depending on the situation. But for example, in the RAV4 Prime, if you're running on electricity, it's powered by electric motors. There's no gasoline engine to assist you when you're on EV mode.
Hey, podcast listeners and TFL Talk viewers. I wanted to take a minute to talk to you about a quick and simple way to sell your car or truck with the help of our new partner, HighRoad. With HighRoad's online portal, you enter your vehicle's VIN number or plate, mileage, and zip code, and you'll get competing offers from several qualified dealers in your area within seconds. You pick the best deal offered and follow through with the dealer to sell your car. No more managing scammy emails from buyers on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. No more time wasted on no-show buyers. No bait and switch with a "will you take a check" excuse from sketchy buyers. Now keep in mind, these offers will be for trade-in values of your vehicle. If you want to go through the hassle of getting more for your car, that's up to you. But if you want to sell your car hassle-free and fast, go to tflcar.com and click Sell Your Car in the navigation menu. Or click on the High Road ad at the bottom of the website if you're on mobile, or click on the column if you're on a desktop. High Road makes it easy, and we like easy.
So that's a way that manufacturers do hybrids. There's also a way that Mitsubishi and a lot of Honda vehicles work, where it's primarily an electric vehicle with the gasoline engine just providing electricity for the electric motors. So it almost acts as like a big generator, and then under certain instances, it can actually couple the gasoline engine directly to the drive wheel. So there's series hybrids, there are parallel hybrids. Those are your two primary types. And then there's a bunch of like different kind of nitpicky ways other manufacturers do hybrids. There's mild hybrids, where it's maybe just a motor mounted on the front of on an engine.
So I think we've confused them enough. I don't think it's that important that we actually get into the specifics, but we wanted to just give you kind of a 30,000 foot overlay to show you kind of what the differences are. But I think what you came here for is the experience that we've had driving all the different hybrids out there, and the ones that we like and the ones that we don't like and the ones that we like and don't like, because obviously some have their good and some have their bad. But let's talk about the very first hybrid, because this is the one that, of course, people know, and that's a Prius, Tommy. Did you know that the Prius wasn't actually the first hybrid to come to America?
I think the Insight beat it by a few months.
Yeah, the Honda Insight beat it. Yeah, so people think the Prius was the first one. We actually got the second generation of Prius. Japan got the first generation.
But did you know that the concept of a hybrid has been around for over a century?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so there were manufacturers working on hybrid technology like the turn of the 20th century even. So it's not a new concept. It really just took till the very late 90s before the manufacturers started implementing them in a mass-produced way.
Yeah, but like I said, the Prius was the one that became the poster child for hybrid. So let's talk about the current Prius, because the Prius started out, for lack of a better word, kind of ugly, right? It was like hit over the nose with an ugly stick. First, it started out as kind of this goofy, compact sedan, and then it went to a kind of a little cockroachy, and I hate to use that word, but a lot of people besides me have used that, hatchback. But now the thing is freaking sexy.
Yeah, right. No, it's really interesting the progression that car has taken from kind of like the poster child for folks that like to hug trees and drink kale smoothies to something that's actually pretty cool. And I think we've seen that across the board with hybrids too, right? When the hybrid first debuted, it's like the vehicle was centered around the powertrain. The whole ethos of the vehicle was around the fact that it had this electric assist. And then as time progressed, as it became more and more common, now hybrids are kind of just a way to propel a vehicle down the road, and it's just like something in the background, but it's not the main focus of the vehicle. The Prius has been a little bit of an exception throughout the years, and it still is kind of the main focus. But if you look at like Toyota, everything from the Sienna to the Tacoma to the Tundra to the Camry, they're all hybrids, and they're not necessarily trying to hit you over the head with their hybridiness.
Yeah, and so let's get some kind of myths out of the way, especially regarding the Prius. So probably the biggest myth that people still seem to buy into is that with the Prius, you're going to have to exchange the battery in like a phone, like every 2 years. Now, I was in Vancouver, where for the longest time the Prius was the taxi cab.
Yeah, I remember.
And I was talking to the taxi cab drivers, and they would go easily 250,000 miles before they had to replace the battery. And then the battery is super easy to replace because it's not lithium ion, I don't think. In that generation, it was lead acid, I believe.
I think it was nickel metal hydride.
Nickel metal
Depends
hydride.
on the era.
Relatively easy to replace, relatively inexpensive to replace. And because the car is not solely powered by that, in fact, it's mainly powered by the internal combustion engine, it's not an issue that anybody has to worry about. So if you're worried about buying a Prius and my God, I got to replace the battery, you probably won't unless you go over 250,000 miles, which most people don't. And I think that I can safely say that includes the Prime, right, which is the plug-in hybrid of the Prius. Now, the plug-in hybrid Prius came around, God, was it last generation?
It was.
That's
yeah.
the fifth, right? The fifth generation.
Yeah, so they've actually had a couple different plug-in Priuses. I mean, they had one back in like 2010. And then the previous generation Prius did have a Prime option. And then the new one, of course, also retains that Prime option. But yeah, that's a good example of a car that went from a standard hybrid to a plug-in hybrid option. And the new one, I think you can go somewhere like 40, 50 miles on electricity only before the gas engine kicks on.
Yeah, let's see what the fuel economy is. We've got, if you're looking for a place to find out what kind of fuel economy a car gets, just go to www.fueleconomy.gov, and you can actually just look up the vehicle, and then you can do comparisons with vehicles, and it'll tell you what the government rates it for.
Now, what's important to know about the Prius, and this is a good one to start with, is depending on the version, you're going to get such different fuel economy.
True that.
So if we look at like a base Prius for 2024 and compare it to, let's compare it to like a higher end Prius compared to a Prime, we're going to see very different numbers based on the wheel size, whether or not it's all-wheel drive. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it nowadays.
Yeah, and the Prius also comes as an all-wheel drive. I think that also happened in the last generation. And in the previous generation, the Prius all-wheel drive was basically powered by the battery. And like I said, there was no drive shaft, and it kind of decoupled after 25 miles an hour. So while it was all-wheel drive, the use case for it was like if you're stuck and you need to get going, then it'll provide you with all-wheel drive. But if you're looking for something that provided sure traction at highway speeds, the Prius would not be the one. So what'd you figure out there?
Well,
Tell
so
me.
like a standard Prius gets 57 mpg combined according to the EPA.
Yep.
If you get an XLE, for example, that's going to drop to 52. So the vehicle's heavier, bigger wheels, less efficient. And if you get a Prime, the MPG is going to drop down to 48. So the Prime with the biggest battery gets the worst economy, which seems kind of counterintuitive, but that's because it can go 40 miles alone on electricity. So when that battery dies, you're just lugging around a big paperweight.
So what's the MPGE though?
114 miles per gallon equivalent.
And that's another thing that you guys have to keep in mind. So plug-in hybrids are only fuel efficient if you plug them in.
Yes.
The nice thing about having a small battery is that you don't necessarily even need a level 2 charger at home, because I assume that's a pretty small battery. So if you plug it into a regular 120 outlet that you probably have in most places, apartments, garages, you could probably fill that battery up overnight.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's nice being able to not have to put anything special in your house.
Now, the other cool thing about a Prius, of course, is that it's gone from kind of, remember when in Top Gear, Jeremy Clarkson took like a high-powered rifle or military rifle and just, blew the heck out of it because he hated the Prius so much because it was such a poster child for a car that is no longer a car, but just an appliance, right?
Okay.
And now it's gone almost 180 degrees, where our friends over at Everyday Driver actually borrowed one from Toyota and took it on the track and converted it to a track car.
Yeah. No, I mean, so the Prius is really elevated. This chair is so squeaky.
I know,
gotta
but they can't hear it. Don't worry.
Okay, well,
I
we
know
gotta
it's
get a new chair.
We need a new chair. Yeah.
Yeah, the Prius has really transitioned from kind of being a boring appliance to something that's very dynamic and kind of interesting. It's still not a track car. It's not that fun to drive, but it's a lot better than the older generations. One area where it's not as good as headroom.
Yep.
So to get this kind of futuristic, low-slung look, they really had to chop down on the head space, which is a little bit of a bummer. And like the old Prius had a great back seat, the new Prius is a little bit tight if you want to carry folks or people or whatever in the back seat. So that is something worth noting.
Yeah, I like the Prius, Tommy, and I like the fact that it's become a sexy plug-in hybrid or hybrid. But my problem with the Prius is the Camry, because the new Camry only comes as a hybrid. And if you look, you'll note that go look up the MPG on the new Camry. It's astounding.
It is interesting that Toyota has gone this route of making everything
A hybrid.
A hybrid, yes, exactly. Let me check something out here really quick.
Yeah, so do the MPGs on the 2025. It's a 2025.
They're not listed yet.
Well, you can. It's out
But
there.
they're out for sale, so they
Yeah.
should be out there.
It should be on him. But
It's not showing up on it. Fueleconomy.gov. 2025, Toyota, and nothing.
okay, well, try just. I don't want to spit a number out there. I think it's like 52 or 53.
One up to, looks like. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Wait,
51?
Did you find it? Yeah, 51?
Yeah, up to 51 combined.
Yeah, that's combined.
Yes.
Yeah, and so in the city, that's the other thing about hybrids. They tend to do much better in the city in stop and go traffic than they do on highways. But 51 combined, at a starting price of around just over $30,000, which is actually less, I think, than the Prius. It's a hell of a fuel economy vehicle, and it's got a lot more room than the Prius.
Now, keep in mind that 50 city, 50 highway, 53 city, 50 highway, 51 combined is for an LE.
Yeah.
So that's going to be your base model bean can.
Yeah.
But it can drop down to, 46, 46 if you get an SE all-wheel drive, and 44, 43, 44 if you get an XSE all-wheel drive. So the higher up the chain you go, the lower it gets. Now, I haven't driven the new Camry.
I've driven it, and I was amazed.
Yeah, you liked it?
In fact, I was so amazed that I actually thought about buying one for a long-term review. I just thought it was such a wonderful, relatively affordable. And when I say $33,000 for the base model, I think that is, very affordable considering that the typical new car starts at $48,000.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, and it's more of an evolution than a revolution. So it starts at 28. I saw that. I don't think you'll ever find one for
No, we're
28.
never going to find that.
But the thing that they've done that is revolutionary is made it a hybrid. So it's pretty much in a lot of ways similar to the outgoing model, with some styling tweaks, but as a car that you want to commute in, as a car that you can drive in the snow, because now there's an all-wheel drive version. It's hard to beat the Camry, unless, of course, you're talking about the Honda Accord hybrid.
Now, pretty much across the line, actually, Toyota has hybrids in just about all their vehicles. I mean, like Supra doesn't have a hybrid GR86, GR Corolla, right? But if we look at like the Crown, right? Let's talk about the Crown. So that's a brand new vehicle that just launched a couple of years ago.
Kind of replaces the Venza.
It kind of replaces the
Venza.
No, not the Venza.
The Venza. It
Avalon.
does.
That's what they said.
Yeah.
Avalon. So it's
Avalon. So okay, all right. Hold on. Avalon was replaced kind of in its customer base, not exactly in its like specs, by the Venza, and then the Venza was a placeholder for the Signia. For the Crown, and now of course there's a Signia version of the Crown.
Which is, I think the Crown Signia is what the Venza turned into.
Yeah.
Because the Crown is it's supposed to be like a high-riding sedan. They still see a big place in the market for sedans, but they know folks want SUVs, so the solution is an elevated sedan.
Yeah, and they do that a lot in Japan because they have a very old population.
Sure.
And so it's a lot harder for older folks like me, Tommy, to get in and out of a car. And so if you make the ride height higher, you also make the seat higher, and that makes it easier for people to get in and out of. The problem I have with the Crown is its starting price. It's expensive.
Yeah, $40,000 starting, right? But it's very luxurious. It's almost Lexus levels of luxurious. There's the standard Crown. There's also a turbo hybrid Crown if you want to go real fast. So there are options for you in the Crown lineup. Now, apart from the Crown, my favorite hybrid in the lineup is actually the Corolla hybrid. So you can still get upwards of 50 miles per gallon in a Corolla. That's more affordable than the Prius. Can get it with all-wheel drive for like the mid $20,000 territory, and has a much more usable rear seat and doesn't look quite as funky. So that is my favorite Toyota on the market, actually, is the Corolla hybrid with all-wheel drive. Great car, comfortable, super reliable, and now can go through the snow with all-wheel drive, which is huge.
Yeah, I would say spend the extra $5,000 and get yourself a Camry. You'll do better and you'll get more vehicle. Now let's talk about the other kind of hybrid that Toyota builds, and we're starting with Toyota obviously because they kind of pioneered hybrids, at least in America, probably in Japan as well. I don't know about Japan. But we recently had the new Land Cruiser, which is also a hybrid.
Sure, yeah, right.
So a 4-cylinder turbo hybrid, and we drove it to Moab. And you would think that, a vehicle like that, when the Camry, which, is probably as spacious inside as the Land Cruiser, maybe not quite, but, not too far off, or even the Insignia, would get good fuel economy, but I think we got like 25 mpg, which is not exactly like the 50 in a Camry blows my mind. 25 in a Land Cruiser, I'm kind of like and that's because that hybrid system is, I think, built more for horsepower and torque as opposed to fuel economy.
I mean, I would say 25 in that thing is amazing.
Okay, fair. I understand.
That car is a brick. It's a 4-wheel drive, low-range brick. And if you're getting 25 with a turbo engine, that tells me that hybrid system is doing its job. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
I mean, you can't get 40 in that thing.
I was expecting like mid-30s right?
Well, it's
Because-
rated at 22, 25, so I don't think you're going to get mid-30s out of
No,
it.
no, I'm saying without knowing what the fuel economy was.
Why?
In my head, I was thinking if a Camry can get 50, then a Land Cruiser should be able to get mid-30s. But, mid-20s at best, I think is just okay. And I think that's because that engine and that hybrid system is tuned for torque and for horsepower versus fuel economy.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because, look, your RAV4 hybrid
Yes.
gets mid-30s, right?
Right.
And, the problem with the Land Cruiser is its body on frame with a solid axle, and it weighs a bajillion pounds and has got the aerodynamic profile of a cinder block, right? So it's just not going to do very well on fuel economy. I think a better example of what you're saying is comparing the hybrid trucks.
Yeah, those are definitely more designed for torque and towing and hauling than they are for overland fuel economy. Because if you look at the Tundra, for instance, it does just a little bit better as a hybrid than if you look at the regular Tundra, and you can look those two up.
Right.
So the regular Tundra,
There's so many versions of this thing.
I know, and keep in mind the more stuff you put in it. In other words, the platinum with heated seats and a huge sunroof, and if you lift it, of course, it's just going to make fuel economy worse. So the heavier you make it, the worse the fuel economy is going to be.
Okay, so the difference between them, yeah, it's about 1 mpg combined.
Yeah, which is nothing. I mean that is pretty. That number is so low that if you were looking to get the hybrid and hoping that you would save the amount of money you spend for the hybrid system in fuel over a long term, you would not be able to ever make that number up.
Sure, but if you want over 580 pound-feet of torque, right? The Tundra
I would
hybrid.
say you need over 5, but anyway, go ahead.
I don't think you need over 580 pound-feet of torque. The normal Tundra gets 480,
Right.
which is already a ton. So and you're seeing a bump in horsepower too with the hybrid. So this is a good example, the iForce Max system, of offering more oomph, right, with electricity, but maybe not the fuel economy gains.
And then there's also an important distinction here. As you know, Tommy, many of the manufacturers, and I think this started with Ford, especially with their trucks, are moving away from 8-cylinder engines, and they've been able to do that with two different methods. First and foremost, of course, turbos.
Sure.
So you can go 6 cylinders and add a turbocharger, which gives you similar power and torque to an not normally aspirated V8. But if you add electrification to that, then it almost allows you to get the same kind of torque and horsepower from a 4-cylinder turbo hybrid that you would get in a V8. And I think you're seeing that, and yet I think it's also something that a lot of people aren't happy with.
Right. No, I think that people are not happy because they think they're losing their kind of V8 rumble, which is definitely true. But the power and the torque gains you gain with electrification are pretty awesome, and you can get those at a super low RPM as well.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, especially now that kind of full EVs have become non-starters for a lot of people have now started to associate hybrids with the same things that they see in pure electric vehicles. And I'm not sure that's a good equivalency. So what I'm hearing out there and I'm seeing in the comments is no longer the people just don't want a regular electric vehicle, but they're also afraid of plug-in hybrids. I think they still want hybrids, but they're also now afraid of plug-in hybrids. And I'm not sure that you can kind of paint the EV reputation across every electrified vehicle. So Tommy, we said at the beginning of this video, best and worst hybrids. So to me, the Prius, I think, ranks as one of the best out there, as does the Camry hybrid. I'm not sure about the Land Cruiser. That 4-cylinder turbo is pretty new, and Toyota has had some issues with their reliability recently, and so I might be a little hesitant and hold off on the 4-cylinder turbo. I have not driven the Corolla, so I know that you said that was one of your favorites. So
Great.
So I don't know much about it, but I could highly recommend the RAV4 Prime.
Yes.
The problem with the RAV4 Prime is it's just expensive and they're hard to get.
I mean, I think they're finally now starting to be attainable. For a lot of years, you could not get into a RAV4 Prime. Because what the RAV4 Prime did is for a long time, the plug-in hybrid world was dominated by cars that could go 7 miles on a charge, 10 miles on a charge.
Kind of useless.
Yeah, and the Prime was the first mainstream crossover that could really have a usable EV range that folks would never get into the gasoline engine. 40 miles or thereabouts of EV range. Great move by Toyota. They're like mid-40s starting. I think they can get into the low 50s, but they are just awesome. So RAV4 Prime and the Corolla Hybrid are my two favorite. I think you're right, Dad. I mean, what we're touching on here is anything with the turbo in it. So Tacoma, Land Cruiser, the Crown Turbo, for example, right? You're not going to see a lot of those fuel economy gains because those are max. That's why they call them iForce Max, because they're going for power. So if you want fuel economy, stay with the naturally aspirated line of Toyota products, but they're all really good. Sienna's excellent as well, the minivan, really very good. But my two top picks from with the huge Toyota hybrid lineup are going to be Corolla Hybrid and RAV4 Prime.
And a lot of those cars you can't get, or you have to struggle to get.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants hybrids now. I think people, like I said, are afraid of plug-in hybrids. I wouldn't be afraid of a plug-in hybrid. I'd actually prefer a plug-in hybrid if I were doing it, especially if your commute is less than, let's say, 30 miles and you can charge up at home at night. All right, let's go over to Honda. Now, Honda kind of was the first Japanese company to come to America with the first original Insight. That was kind of an interesting vehicle, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really was. And that was the definition of do everything possible to get this car to the highest possible fuel economy.
Yeah, it had those side skirts. It only came with the manual, if I remember right.
Or CVT.
Or CVT.
Yeah.
It was a two-seater.
Two-seater only,
Yeah.
yep. And it had a 3-cylinder engine with a hybrid assist system. It was called the IMA. And basically, it was not at all like Toyota's system, where you could go short distances on electricity alone. It only offered assistance and start-stop technology. So when you were like merging on a highway, it would give you this little cool graph, would give you electric boost. And it did a lot of cool stuff, but it was so impractical and too expensive. So it wasn't a big seller.
Yeah, and I mean, two-seater, two-door, right?
It's not a recipe for
success, yeah. And then, Honda has kind of been on and off with their hybrids, right?
Right.
They've kind of struggled with them, but now there's a new generation of hybrids that just came out recently. And so I would think by this point, Honda has got their hybrid game on, and they would be much better at it. So I think they realize that this is where people are. And so I've driven a bunch of their hybrids, and I got to say, Tommy, I like them. I think they've done a really good job with them.
Well, the interesting one, so, now we've got an Accord,
Yep.
a CRV,
Which also gets close to 50.
right? I don't think it's that high.
It is. That was on the launch of it.
CRV? Wow.
No, the Accord.
Oh, Accord.
Yeah. That's like high 40s.
Yeah. CRV.
Yeah.
Right. But they just brought back the Civic Hybrid, which I just drove.
Yeah, and?
It was cool about the Civic Hybrid is it's kind of we were talking about with the Toyota, you've got the economy hybrids and you got the fun hybrids. Civic Hybrid kind of walks that line beautifully, where it's a little bit of fun and a little bit of fuel economy. And I mean, it has basically the same horsepower and torque as some of the previous gen SI products. So it's a really powerful hybrid system.
Except Honda has this, I think, issue where they tend to pair their hybrids with CVTs, which makes sense if you're trying to get the highest fuel economies. But to me, a CVT, and I don't want to sound like, I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm going to beat this dead horse, Tommy, just takes the joy out of driving anything. And I know you can make it emulate a regular transmission where it's stepped. Nissan does that with theirs. But I do not like CVTs.
Well, hold on there, Sport.
All right.
Because yes, they do call it a CVT.
Yes.
But it's not the CVT you're thinking
It's
of.
different, I know.
So there's a couple of
ways.
ways.
It feels like, go ahead, explain how it works, and then I'll tell you my problem with it.
I mean, the traditional CVT
Is a belt.
is comprised of a cone and a belt, to
Yep.
simplify it, or a cone and a chain. And basically, the chain moves up and down the cone to the small end of the cone to the big end of the cone, depending on how fast you're going. And what a CVT does, the reason that it's more efficient in a gasoline vehicle, is it allows the engine to operate at a constant RPM.
At its most efficient port.
Yep, while allowing the user to change speed without compromising fuel economy.
Thus creating the most drony car of them all.
Yeah, but what you end up with is also a car that is potentially unreliable because the built-in CVTs, as Nissan is well aware of, can wear out.
I think the Jatcos were.
Jatcos, yeah.
Jatco, yeah.
A lot of the new hybrid systems, though.
Planetary gear set.
Yes, it's a planetary gear set where you use electric motors to basically change quote-unquote gear ratios within the transmission. So there's really nothing to wear out, or very, very, very little to wear out.
But the basic idea is the same, right? You're trying to keep that engine in its maximum efficient RPM range.
And then you use it as, for example, a generator. And this Civic, I had a nice long chat with the chief engineer of the Civic Hybrid.
Yeah.
It works a lot like that kind of, we were talking about series parallel hybrids earlier. This is like that locomotive philosophy, where this vehicle is almost exclusively an electric car. It's powered by the electric architecture.
So it's more like a Volt.
The
old GM Volt.
The gasoline is just there to provide electricity. However, and the Volt did this too, even though GM would never tell you this, but they would do this at steady state cruising.
It would couple the electric gas engine to the transmission, which then would turn the wheels.
At steady state cruising, it would bypass the transmission,
Right.
and it would engage a clutch, which would then one-to-one send engine speed directly to the wheels. Because then you're cruising at a constant, let's say 2,300 RPM, that engine's just buzzing along. That's more efficient than making electricity and then converting it into rotational movement. So the Civic was great though in the hybrid form. 200 horsepower, starting in the mid $20,000 territory, lots of torque, such a good car.
What's the fuel economy? What are we looking at with the Civic Hybrid?
I don't want to say it wrong. It's
Right.
pretty good.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Let me get the...
Because I mean, that would directly compete with the Corolla Hybrid.
Yeah.
Except you can't get a Civic Hybrid in all-wheel drive. So I think Honda is kind of playing catch-up with their hybrids to Toyota because Toyota does offer many of their sedans, not just their crossovers and SUVs, in all-wheel drive now.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas Honda is still front-wheel drive biased. That's, of course, not true when you get into like the CR-V.
So 50
Yeah.
city, 47
That's
highway,
really good.
49
Yeah,
combined.
it's pretty excellent.
Yeah, so it's pretty good numbers. Yeah. No, I mean it was a great car, and like I said, what the Civic did really well is it perfectly walked that line between fun to drive and just economy blob. So it's really good. You know, I think a lot of the Honda products are like that too. The Accord Hybrid, fun car to drive as well. Really good platform. Quite luxurious and decent fuel economy, over 46 mpg in the city, depending on how equipped. So yeah, overall, that I was very impressed with the Civic Hybrid. You know, it almost feels like that some of the other Hondas need to be electrified now because they're that good. Like the Passport and the Pilot need that hybridization standpoint
I agree.
because you're competing with like Highlander and that kind of thing, and those are all hybrids.
Which is all hybrid, yeah. And then while we're at it, let's talk about the minivans because there are only 4 of them, right? The Odyssey is not electrified whatsoever.
No.
Whereas the Sienna, the Toyota Sienna is. And then, of course, the one that is a plug-in hybrid is the Pacifica.
Yes.
So, but that doesn't come in all-wheel drive. And this is something I would actually talk about.
You're forgetting one.
The Carnival. I didn't forget the Carnival, which now comes as a plug-in hybrid for 2025. I saw it.
Standard hybrid or plug-in? Do you remember?
It comes in as a plug-in,
Is it
I
plug-in
believe,
hybrid?
yeah, at the Chicago Auto Show. But there seems to be this weird thing that happens, and you're seeing it in vehicles like the Maverick, where you can choose one. You can choose all-wheel drive or hybrid, but you can't have both.
Sure.
And living in Colorado and loving all-wheel drive, it seems like, you know, as an engineering solution, that makes sense because if you got to drive another set of wheels, then it's going to, you know, decrease your fuel economy. But in Colorado and in any place where it snows, or if anybody wants, you know, sure-footed traction, that is a bad compromise.
Well, I mean, it's so the company that's doing that the worst, like you said, is Ford. So like if you want the plug-in hybrid Escape, you can't get it in all-wheel drive. If you want the standard hybrid Maverick, you can't get it in all-wheel drive. And Toyota's solution to this,
you can get the Escape in all-wheel drive, which is crazy.
in the standard hybrid,
Right.
but not the
plug-in hybrid. And you can't get the Maverick as a hybrid with all-wheel drive, which
Sure.
is also crazy, even though they're built on the same platform.
I think part of the challenge is the packaging, right? Cars are packaged to within millimeters these days to make them as small and as compact as possible, and from a drivetrain standpoint. And when all of a sudden you have to put a battery someplace and then run the DC to DC inverter and the controllers, I mean, putting those along with the full all-wheel drive system is a challenge, especially if you have to run this giant prop shaft down the entire center of the vehicle, which is why the Toyota system makes sense. Because you just have a few wires to a motor in the back that can be a little tiny baby motor. Turn that on when you need it, and then you're not killing your packaging standpoint.
You know who did that first and a long time ago?
Who?
The BMW i8 did that, right?
Oh,
and the NSX did that,
yeah,
and what Ferrari was it that did it, right? Where basically the supercars, they decided that you can have a gas motor that powers the rear wheels, which is the i8, little 3-cylinder mini turbo, and then you could put an electric motor for the front wheels. And back then it was like magic getting the two to work together. But today it's pretty seamless.
Sure.
Especially, I think like a good example of that would be the Lexus RX, which is the most popular Lexus, and yet they've been doing it for the last 10 years, and it's completely seamless.
Yeah, no, I think we've got that technology down. A lot of the early gen like RXs with the hybrid systems, the rear motor didn't have enough oomph to really help you out in deep snow conditions. So it ended up kind of being subpar compared to its competition in snow. But now that we've got this dual motor system set up pretty sorted, especially in the world of EVs where that's all you really have, we're in a good place.
So out of all the minivans, I would probably pick either the Sienna or the Pacifica. I've only seen the Carnival, the new one, at the Chicago Auto Show, so I've yet to drive it, so I don't want to comment on it. But it looks by far the most luxurious. It has these second row seats where it's like being in a first class, a private jet actually, where you can put your feet up. It's like a little foot butler. It's pretty cool. But like I said, I haven't driven it, so I can't comment on it.
I don't know if that one's a plug-in hybrid.
It's just a hybrid?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a hybrid.
Someone will let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, maybe it's just a hybrid.
But yeah, I like the look of it. Yeah, and the interior is very comfortable.
And the Koreans, let's talk about before we go to the Koreans, let's finish up with the Japanese. Now, what about Nissan, Tommy? Where are their hybrids?
Nissan's a little behind the ball.
Yeah.
But interestingly, they're kind of behind the ball in the U.S. So, like
I think they did the Leaf, and then they were like, okay, we got it, we're done. It's like Henry Ford. This is the most affordable, most perfect electrified vehicle, and then they kind of forgot about hybrids.
I mean, it was a decision they made, in America. It's definitely, I think, for a while though, they did have like the Rogue hybrid. Remember?
I remember.
Like you could get vehicles in hybrid, but now, I mean, if we're looking at our lineup here, Rogue, no hybrid, Pathfinder, they're going more all electric. Ari is all electric, right? Leaf's obviously all electric, but yeah, Nissan is not really embracing the hybrid thing.
And I think it probably has more to do with the lack of money, right? They're still digging themselves out of the hole that Carlos Ghosn, supposedly saved them from.
But they're not really the only ones in that space. I mean, look at Volkswagen.
Well, let me finish with the Japanese, because there's one more we can't forget, and that's Subaru. And Subaru, I think you would agree with me, had the worst hybrid ever.
Well, they had a really bad plug-in hybrid.
They had the Crosstrek. You remember that?
That was really bad.
Which was so bad that it was something like, and I'm going to get these numbers wrong because it's been a while now, but it was like $10,000 more expensive and offered like 0.002 better fuel economy.
Well, it had a 17-mile range in the later ones.
So they might have the distinction of building the worst plug-in. Was it a plug-in or was it?
It was a plug-in.
The worst plug-in hybrid in the history of automobiles.
They may have done a standard hybrid too.
And it was a head scratcher because everybody was like, "What? Why would you pay more to get less?"
Yeah, it was not very good.
No.
But yeah, so Nissan and Subaru are behind the ball on hybrids. There's just no way around it.
Yep. So shall we jump to the American brand that is probably jumped the farthest? And this is an unusual brand, but I would say Jeep with their 4xEs have kind of gone the farthest into, and I think Chevy's catching up to them, and so is Ford. But Jeep is really committed to their 4xEs.
And Jeep kind of skipped the standard hybrid thing and went right to plug-in.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the Wrangler, right? Plug-in hybrid, and the Grand Cherokee.
Yeah.
A part of the reason that Jeep has gone so deep into hybrids is because, and especially working for them now, is plug-in hybrids, depending on where they're manufactured in the battery.
I think it's CAFE numbers. Their CAFE numbers are so
that's
horrible.
True. But it's because they were eligible for tax credits.
Yeah.
And essentially what that means is the government is lopping $7,500 off the price of the eligible hybrids.
Yeah.
Which is a huge deal, right? And of course, CAFE, you're right. Now, the plug-in hybrids aren't great, I would say, in the Jeeps.
It's like definitely like
They're
plug-in
very
hybrid
generation like 1.0.
1.0, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like they've kind of built it, but they haven't refined it.
Like, especially in the early Wranglers 4xEs, like a lot of people in even semi-cold environments were being locked out of EV when it got cold, which
And
is just dumb.
I think it's also confusing. They have like those 3 little buttons, like you want to run on hybrid, you want to save.
Well,
That's also a weird button.
The buttons are fine. The problem is
It's hard knowing which one you should be
there's
hitting.
hybrid, electric, and save. And what save does is it saves a battery for later.
Unless you exceed a certain speed, in which case the engine turns on.
No, save is engine on immediately. So save saves the battery for later.
Right, okay.
And then there's a button you can click in the infotainment which will actually charge the battery as well. So
It's
you can
very
use the gas
confusing.
engine to charge it up.
But the problem with the electric one is if you exceed a certain speed, it turns the gas engine on, which most plug-in hybrids actually do. And that, I think, confuses people because you're like trucking along and you're like, hey, I'm in all electric mode, and all of a sudden the engine turns on.
But a lot of times it's like 86 miles an hour. So it's usually above
Or a hill.
or a big hill.
Or towing.
I mean, and that's something worth noting too. Like plug-in hybrids, some of the older ones were really slow on electricity only.
Oh my God,
They
yeah.
were really, really slow.
I think the i8 might be.
That's a really good example.
Yeah.
But like, I just like the older Volvo plug-in hybrids would just kind of mosey along in EV modes. The new ones, though, they got some real torque behind it. So there's different calibrations on when they actually kick on the gasoline engine. Basically, you don't want to be in EV mode and then get hit by a truck. So every manufacturer works a little differently when you're merging on a highway in EV mode to kick on the gas engine for max power. It's another problem with plug-in hybrids, though, is you're asking your gasoline engine to go to peak torque after 40 miles of driving on electricity, and that engine could be stone cold, right? So you're redlining a stone cold engine. But Jeep does pretty well with their hybrids. I think the Grand Cherokee plug-in hybrid 4xE is pretty good. They're just expensive. You know, like a Grand Cherokee 4xE starts at $60,000.
Yeah, would you, I mean, here's the problem with that $7,500 rebate. It just makes the car $7,500 more expensive, right? If whatever product planner or whatever magician says this, oh, they get $7,500 back. Well, let's raise the price by $7,500, and that's a real shame. All right, let's keep moving. Now, Ford obviously doesn't build a lot of cars. You know, they're mainly SUVs and trucks, and in terms of their hybrids, they do have the Maverick as a truck. Of course, which is great, but that's the only truck hybrid that they build. Ford F-150 hybrid as well.
Yeah,
How could I
F-150
forget that?
hybrid, yeah. Explorer, right,
Yep.
hybrid. We've got the Escape hybrid. So Ford's pretty big into the hybridization of the e-Transit. It's an electric one, right? So they actually are pretty far into the hybrid realm, sort of, kind of, right?
Yeah, and I would not hesitate to recommend. Andre had this truck and he loved it. The F-150, you know, the EcoBoost hybrid.
Well, what was great about the Power Boost is what the Power Boost does in the F-150 is you don't necessarily get better fuel economy, right?
No, but you get the ability to plug in all your tools and toys and
That's the
charge them
key.
up. Yeah, and your house. We tried that actually.
That is the piece of the puzzle that Toyota missed with their hybrid trucks.
It's
is
a giant generator.
7 kilowatts of onboard power, which is just a game changer for camping or for saving yourself in a power outage or running a wedding if the lights turn off. I mean, it's so much onboard power that works so well. You get 120 and 240 volt capability. It's just fantastic. So that is what really separates the F-150 from the crowd in my mind.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've driven the Escape plug-in hybrid. I've driven the Escape, but to me, that's kind of just a middling car.
It was not good, no.
Yeah, it was kind of a placeholder.
The problem is they launched the Escape hybrid to the press, and it was like 200 and something horsepower and 40 miles of range front-wheel drive. Then Toyota came out with the RAV4 Prime, which was like 320 horsepower, 40 miles of range, and standard all-wheel drive. And Ford actually, I think for a while, pulled that car off their website.
I think you're right, yeah.
And then kind of sneaked it back in because it's not good. It's just not good enough compared to its competition. It's pretty affordable, which we got to give them credit for, but front-wheel drive only, not super fast. It's just not the best out there.
So GM, one of the first out there with a really good hybrid, and that is, of course, the Volt. And I think they were maybe too far ahead of the curve because, you know, everything I've read about the Volt, everything I've heard about the Volt is it's just an exceptional car. With the one exception, two exceptions, is that it doesn't have a 3-person back seat, right? Because the battery goes right down kind of the spine of the car, and so it makes it into a 4-seater. And I think people don't necessarily need 5 people to sit in their car, but they think they do. So when they looked at it, they were like, this is goofy. Why does it only have 4 seats? But as a car that was way ahead of its time, had some incredible engineering, really good fuel economy, and above all, just stupendous reliability, I think you'd be hard-pressed to match the Volt. And then, of course, the Cadillac ELR, which was, the Cadillac's version of the Volt, was so freaking expensive that it never made a dent in anything, because the Volt was like back in the day, probably 20s, high 20s, and then the Cadillac came in like at 70s or 80s.
Yeah, I mean,
which is crazy.
Yeah, that was Bob Lutz's whole thing, was about the Volt being 40 miles of range, which is the average U.S. commute. And on paper, it was the best car anyone ever wanted. In reality, we learned the lesson that people buy the car for the 120th percentile of use case, which is the road trip they never take. So it was such a good idea. It was actually really well executed. Didn't really pan out long term, because obviously it's gone. And then
the second version of it, same powertrain, but they kind of copied Prius, right? They kind of went and decided to make it look like a Prius. And I think I like the kind of somewhat rounded off, boxy design language of the very first one, much more than I like the second generation, which just looked like, like another Honda Civic or another Corolla in some ways.
What I will say is the rest of the Chevy lineup is pretty minimal on hybrids.
They don't do they've
all
electric.
They're going all electric mostly. So Equinox EV, Blazer EV, right? See that across Silverado EV, right? There's no Silverado hybrid. Same thing with like the GMC Sierra EV now, and Cadillac with the Lyriq and the Optic, and they're going into the all electric realm.
So. Now let's jump to the Germans, because the Germans took an interesting approach, which is they did what's called a mild hybrid, a 48-volt system. So it's basically it's basically like hybrid light.
I mean, really what it does is it allows them to run ancillaries off the engine off 48 volt, which makes them a little bit more efficient. And then it usually enables start-stop technology. So you can be at a light, engine turns off, click it back on, you're running on that 48 volt motor generator, and it's fine. Now, BMW, to their credit.
Not BMW, though. I'm talking about, I'm talking about Volkswagen, I'm talking about Mercedes.
Geez, the Mercedes, I don't even think Volkswagen does 48 volts.
No, but okay, so fair enough. But
Mercedes with the EQ boost is big in that.
Yeah,
BMW does that too. But
BMW is the only one that's gone like seriously into the traditional hybrids.
Although Mercedes is coming back.
Are they?
So if we look at like BMW, they have their E line of vehicles.
Yep.
Like the X5 50E. And so BMW's been doing this for a while now, actually. These plug-in hybrids that they've done have been around for some time. And they've been pretty good in some situations and some specifications. But like this latest crop is really good. So like when the X5 hybrid launched, I think it could do maybe 10 miles on a single charge. This new X5 50E,
built in America, by the way.
Yeah, range of up to 40 miles on a charge. So they're really taking it seriously now.
Yeah.
And you see that on the SUVs and the sedans.
Yeah.
They're really good. They're pretty efficient. They're nice to drive, and overall I like them quite a bit. Mercedes, by the way, too, one of the best hybrids I drove this year was the GLE plug-in hybrid. So this is an interesting car because it's one of the few plug-in hybrids that you can DC fast charge, which is pretty crazy.
Well, and Mitsubishi.
And the Outlander. Yes, that's right. We didn't talk about Mitsubishi.
So let's talk about what that means. We kind of went into the weeds there. So most plug-in hybrids, you can level 2 charge. In other words, up to 40 amps, something like that.
Usually, yeah.
48 amps maybe. So you could plug them in at home if you have a level 2 charger, or plug them into the wall. But if you want to fast charge them, and that is like going to the public DC fast charger, they just don't accept that. Because the battery is so small, it doesn't really need it. Having said that, Mercedes, like Tommy said, is one of the ones, and Mitsubishi Outlander is another one where you can actually fast charge, except the Outlander uses CHAdeMO, and CHAdeMO is in America.
Dead, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if that really counts.
But GLE 450E up to 48 miles on electricity alone. So pretty good, yeah.
And then, of course, we can't forget the BMW XM, which is the ultimate hybrid for performance.
That's right, yeah.
600 some horsepower, I believe.
So it's like, it's interesting seeing the philosophy of these companies. Like a lot of the Germans kind of dabbled in hybrids like 10 years ago.
Yeah, and then they kind of stuck their toe in the water and said, "Ooh, it's not good."
And then they went full electric,
which was also not good, especially Mercedes.
Yeah, although they're good. It's a
cars.
whole other podcast.
Look, yeah, it's a whole other podcast. Mercedes, just quick. I think Mercedes built some of the best electric vehicles. They're just not stylish.
Yes, no, they're not good. So they went full electric or plug-in hybrid now, and they kind of steered away from the standard hybrids. Like there was that X6 standard hybrid, and there was a Jetta hybrid, remember, a while back, and then they've kind of abandoned those.
Yeah, but I would highly recommend, the X5 hybrid.
GLE is really, really good.
Yeah, GLE hybrid, really plug-in hybrid, really good. If you can find them, like they're so popular right now that any hybrids, specifically any high-end hybrids, are very hard to find.
There's also a whole another realm of cars that we haven't tested yet, like the Range Rover plug-in hybrids.
Brand new, yeah.
They're all supposed to be pretty good, so we haven't got to those yet. But yeah, the Germans are getting pretty into the plug-in hybrid thing. Volkswagen's a company that's got gas or electric, right? You got gasoline out, you got electric out. There's no plug-in really options. You get one or the other.
But Volkswagen Group, which consists of 11 brands now, definitely does build a lot of cool plug-in hybrids, including the new Lamborghini Revuelto, which is a plug-in hybrid.
Sure.
Once again,
right.
I got to drive that. I think it goes 11 miles on all electricity or something. And the plug for it is in the front, which is funny because you're never going to, charge it in public because you'll have to leave your front open. But whole nother animal, whole nother podcast. So what are you looking at there? Audi.
Well, Audi used to be really into the hybrid thing, and they had some plug-in hybrids, but now it's mostly
e-tron.
full gas or full electric.
Yeah.
So most of the Volkswagen Group has gone down that route. You want gas? You want electric?
And it's kind of bad timing when people all want hybrids.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate.
I think Toyota's now kind of in the catbird
Porsche
seat.
does hybrids though, which is interesting.
Porsche does hybrids.
They do a lot of plug-in hybrids now.
But they're all, and Porsche has been doing plug-in hybrids for quite a while.
Long time.
Remember
over a
the
decade.
Cayenne diesel?
That was not a plug-in hybrid.
It was a hybrid.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
I thought that was a plug-in.
No, that was a 3-liter turbo.
They didn't do it. I thought that was the only diesel hybrid.
I don't think so. Maybe in Europe, but I don't think they brought it to the States. Yeah. But you can
But there was a
get,
Cayenne plug-in
hybrid and Cayenne plug-in hybrid
Yeah,
as well.
and now, of course, with the new 911, it's also hybrid.
Yeah, right. They're doing normal hybrids now.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And then how about the Koreans, Tommy?
Well, the Koreans are very into the hybrid thing now.
They are. They've
been
like
in
the
there for a
Japanese,
while. And what's cool about the Korean offerings is very rarely do you find one vehicle that can be had in gasoline hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and full electric. But if you look at vehicles like the Kia Niro, that's a vehicle that you have a bunch of different options for.
Yeah, and we're talking about Kia and Hyundai, by the way.
Yeah, right. So yeah, Hyundai and Kia, right? There's a lot of different options within the vehicle lineup, both with standard gasoline, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and now full electric. So whether you want a Tucson and gasoline, a Tucson and hybrid, or a Tucson and plug-in hybrid, you got options.
Yeah, no, they haven't quite committed to doing all their lineup in hybrids, but it's pretty close.
I mean, yeah, they're doing pretty darn well. Like Santa Cruz doesn't have a hybrid, Venue doesn't have a hybrid, but Kona, right? Same thing. Kona's got a full EV. They've got a gasoline version.
And they also have a pretty large stable of EVs, right? So let's take like Hyundai as an example. They have the Ioniq 5, they have the Ioniq 6, they have the what else do they have that's electric?
The Kona is
The Kona,
electric.
yep.
Yeah. So
and I think their new 3-row's coming as well.
And even stuff like their Elantra hybrid is so good. Up to 58 mpg highway in the Elantra hybrid, which is just nuts. So they got a lot of good stuff. Some of their hybrids, like the Elantra, can't be had in all-wheel drive still. But for the most part, they have a really wide offering, and they're all pretty darn good. And they're sometimes more affordable than Toyota options as well.
And I can hear you guys typing on your computer. What about Mazda?
Mazda has...
They have one.
They do have a plug-in hybrid.
Yes, exactly.
Now. It's 690.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they finally got into the plug-in hybrid world, which is good to hear.
So their 3-row is a plug-in hybrid.
Yes.
Yeah, which is great. So Mazda is also another company, which is kind of small, and they have limited. Nissan isn't small, Mazda's smaller, but they have certainly limited budget in terms of development.
Of course, a lot of the Toyota hybrid stuff will apply to Lexus. So a lot of this Lexus stuff you can get in hybrids now. Acura, there's not a lot of hybridization in Acura. You have a full electric now, but really not much in terms of standard hybrids.
Yeah, once again, Lexus, like you said, pretty much any version of the Toyota that is a Lexus,
you're going to get in a hybrid.
Yeah. So.
And they're all very good for the most part. They're very good. So, and the plug-in hybrids are good as well too now. So interesting to see how the different manufacturers are tackling this problem.
I would say, right at this moment in history, Toyota is probably sitting at the top of the pile because they just offer such a wide range of both everyday cars, trucks, and luxury cars with Lexus that are hybrids.
So, of all of the cars we talked about, what are some of your favorites?
Out of the hybrids, I would say my favorite of all those is probably the Camry hybrid, which I just drove. I was so impressed by that. I would also say the Accord hybrid is spectacular. I think that's a little bit more fun to drive than the Camry hybrid. So if you want something that's a little bit more entertaining in the full-size sedan, go for that. The BMW X5 hybrid is also incredible. My wife just had the X5, and the hybrid is just a really great car. What else am I thinking? What am I missing here?
Well, my highlights, Corolla hybrid with the all-wheel drive,
Yeah.
really good. Prius, really, really good. Civic hybrid, the new one, is excellent. I'm kind of going to take a weird take here, but I really do like the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid.
Okay,
I actually
fair.
think it's pretty good and it drives really well. And it's a lot quicker than a RAV4 Prime, even though the RAV4 Prime is probably better. I do like that a lot as well. Same thing in that class, Tucson plug-in hybrid, a little bit more affordable, $38,000 starting, H-Track all-wheel drive standard, 33 miles of range, great car. So the Tucson's very good. Maverick, the Ford Maverick, the little truck, easily one of the best hybrids out there. What else? What else is really, really good?
I think the F-150.
Yeah, Power Boost.
Power Boost is it's been around for such a long time that you do.
Oh, Mercedes GLE.
Yeah.
I really like that plug-in hybrid.
Yeah,
It's very good if you have a bigger budget. So for me, I used to be very anti plug-in hybrid because you kind of get the worst of both worlds, worst fuel economy, and the worst kind of electricity as a car, right? It's a bad EV, it's a bad gas car, but I've come to like them because it offers a good compromise for a lot of people.
I also have to say I like the Wrangler 4xe.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, it's the most fun hybrid.
When we were going up Red Cone, it managed to do 3 miles and all electric.
Yes, but usually you
burn
can do
through
like
it pretty quick
20 miles on the road.
On the road when you get off road, but it even though it is 1.0, I think it is pretty fun, and I don't think there's anything else in its class, and I think it's coming. I think Ford's going to build I think both the Bronco Sport and the real Bronco are, I should say real, I mean
Full
the big
size.
Bronco, yeah. They're both Broncos. I think those are going to get hybridized. I think pretty much in the next 5 years, we're going to see just a plethora of hybrids being introduced as well as plug-in hybrids. So I would say hang on to your hats if you're out there and you're looking for a hybrid, because I think instead of electrifying, the industry has decided that hybridization is what consumers want, and they may be right about it. So I think we're going to see just a lot of different hybrids coming out in the near term.
Yep. Well, folks, let us know what you think in the comments section below.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us. Remember, if you want to see all of our coverage, head on over to All TFL. And as always, this is Roman.
And Tommy, check out alltfl.com for the latest and greatest in new car reviews.
And we'll see you next time. Ciao.